Hey everybody, this is Eshin Lacoste. Once again, another segment at All Wyse Transformation, where we talk about mental health, spiritual practice, and self-care. And today I have an awesome guest with me, friend, artist, bicyclist, living in the Boston area, doing their thing. And they were gracious enough to give me some of their time to talk about their artistic insight, their way of moving through the Boston area and creating art and creating space and really sort of tapping into DJing, singing, very sort of artistic performance, which I've seen and I love, and looking at what does that practice look like when you're doing what you love and trying to find a balance in the rat race of what it means to get your artistic interest, your passion out there. So, Achazi, welcome. And if you don't mind, I would like to sort of start like, what does it mean to be an artist?
Hi, Ashton. Thank you for having me. And thank you for the lovely, warm introduction. Yes. Um, Excited to be here. I what it means to be an artist. I think for me, what it means to be an artist is to have a sustained practice that lasts a period of time, however long, however short, but it be a period of like concentrated focus, study, work, and some sort of output. Whether it be just for you or if you have a constituency. I think like the output of the artistry is like super important in terms of like having tokens of your concentrated effort like encapsulated in projects. So I am a musician and I like to make songs. So for instance, I one axis on which I measure my artistry is through like my my output. So basically like um how many songs am I releasing a year? Or like, how many projects am I involved in? Like what am I working on that people don't see? If I'm working on anything at all, am I in remission? Am I in repose? Like what's the phase? And sometimes the multitude of phases can be a bit scary because I may be in a phase distant from the one that is most productive, or the one that's like has yields the most output, or um, feels like a creative flourish, the way I would want it to feel. And it feels like remission, it feels like repose, it feels like introspection and like go back to the drawing board or like have being occupied in another area of life that also like inevitably informs the work. So yeah, just like the artist life balance, I call it, or I guess I'm calling it now.
Yeah.
Um, is yeah, it's important to kind of like toe
So,
for me to
so,
like.
so, so I'm curious, and when you're writing a song, or forgive my ignorance about like sort of setting the musical aspect to the song or to the lyrics, is there like a particular way that you sort of set that space, or is there a ritual that you do to sort of get yourself really in that mindset? If that question makes any sense.
It does, yes. I think what I do sometimes I operate a lot on harnessing fleeting ideas. So,
Mm-hmm.
I may not even plan to have a studio session or especially a writing session. I will plan to have a studio session, but it won't explicitly like be like a songwriting session. Um, and I'll just, whatever, I'll have these fleeting ideas, like they mostly like be like on pieces of paper, on sticky notes, in the notes app in my phone. Um, and some days I will feel it at the beginning of the day when I have like this idea to expand upon something that I've scribbled down. Um, and that will be a signal that I need to like indulge and go further like in this creative rabbit hole today. And so I work in spurts, usually like inside the artistry, outside of the artistry. That's just kind of like my work habit, like my cadence. Um, but I do think in terms of balancing the artistry with everything else, as everything else becomes more regular, I have to start putting things on the calendar in terms of like, oh, I should, be in the studio Tuesdays and Thursdays this week because I only have so many free hours and I need to allocate a certain amount of hours to a project. Or maybe it's not even a specific project. It's just about like being creative and like doing because I do it for the emotional regulation and the spiritual expression first before anything
Mhm.
else. And so
Mm.
if I don't do it enough, or if I feel like I'm creatively stalled, then it starts to spool up anxiety in other areas of my life.
Mm.
And I've noticed that. So,
Do
yeah,
you think it's challenging to sort of be in a creative headspace when you sort of, again, for folks who don't know, you live in the Boston area, like there's so many distraction, there's so many things that are going on, and like when you're in that creative headspace, one, and then two, let me know if I'm asking too many questions. When do you know it's done? Like when you're listening to it, or like this sounds right. Like I've captured what I really wanted to capture. And yeah, like what is sort of that feeling for you when you're trying to really say, okay, this piece has been completed.
um, I when I'm eyes brain deep in a project, I do kind of have a tunnel vision about it. Living in Boston, yes, as you mentioned, there are a lot of distractions, and as a part and parcel to the communities in which we're involved, which are great. And love that aspect of my life and my practice. But as especially as like Boston is more has been more suited as a tech city rather than an artist city.
Mm, mm,
Those distractions are not only side quests or like invitation to side quests, but it's they often take me and put me into other disciplines. And so I spend a lot of my time like trying like actively maintaining my artistic paradigm in non-artistic circumstances. Um, because it just feels like, the spice of life that I need to taste in order to make it interesting.
yeah.
Um, but as far as like knowing when something is done, I do listen, I proof listen a lot to my work, and usually I'll listen to something from start to finish, like if it's a recording, if it's a song, and if usually I will be evoked to tears before the end of the song, like if I'm not, it's rare that I'm not, but when I am evoked to tears, it's usually not because of the subject matter of the song or like what the song specifically means to me, but I'm thinking about like me having finished something in the context of like being in this world. Like
Yeah.
and like presenting it and like thinking about like the impact that it could have to someone beyond myself.
Mm,
And it's
mm.
also extremely affirming. So it's like it reifies my power to finish things that I start and like my aptitude for commitment, it feels um, in a way that like everything is going to be okay, even though I have no idea.
Yeah. Well,
But
and plus it sounds like it's like you're trusting yourself, right? You're trusting this sort of like this intuitive aspect of like the internal knowing, or sort of the the process that you sort of created for yourself, or the set of steps that you've created for yourself that says, okay, like these are the markers I've reached, or again, these are sort of my words, and looking at like something that feels right and feels like it's really either singing or humming or just really like just clicking for you and that requires a lot of like internal faith or comfortability with oneself. And so I'm curious, how do you manage with that? Like, okay, I'm creating for myself compared to I'm creating for others or like the popular thing. Like, do you find like there's this sort of like internal struggle, or is this just nope, this is for me, and regardless of who likes it or who doesn't like it really doesn't matter because it just feels right for me.
Yeah. I think yes, there is a little bit of an internal struggle. Ideally, I think the struggle would not be there.
Yeah.
Um, but I think mostly I do really well with like making music for myself, and because like it replenishes me so much, and it's like such a large part of who I am. I have to satisfy that need of doing it for me first. So that's always like the top priority, even in the context of, let's say, I've been commissioned to do a remix for like a compilation project. And like, for instance, I'm working on a Madonna remix. And I don't
Ooh.
necessarily, yeah, it's gonna be fun. I've been doing these remixes with this project or like this group called like Madonna Remixes United, which releases like mega compilations and has done so over a period of 10 years. And they're like known as the internet's like like Madonna, like biggest Madonna encyclopedia, like in terms of like her catalog and like yeah. So I naturally I wouldn't gravitate to a Madonna remix because well maybe there's some songs of hers that I like, but and there are some songs of hers that I do really like, to be clear, but I have so many ideas, and she would be so far down the waiting list, so to speak. um but I do like to be challenged specifically in this way because I feel like this is my prompt, or like this is a prompt um, of many that I have, where it's like, okay, I want to initiate like a creative, I want to create something new and something that satisfies and fulfills me, and that I think like should be out in the world, that is like, distinct enough to exist on its own. And I wanted to reach people in a very specific way. And so sometimes I will call upon, like, I think inevitably too, like I call upon like the cultural zeitgeist of the moment,
Hmm.
to really like contextualize like the time upon which like the music is like focused also, because I think like music generally is like a decoration of time. And I
Mm.
pulling that from someone, and I don't remember who it is, but it is not a quote directly from my brain. um and yeah, so it's like every song is like a period piece. And so when I'm remixing, when I'm sampling, I'm really excited to like just draw the parameters of that period.
Mm. Mm.
So I get excited to reach people like in moments like that where it's like, oh, I'm making a mixtape, like, and I want to like include some sound bites from reality TV, like. Oh, I know exactly who would understand this, or who would get this, or who would be tickled, or who would
Yeah.
cackle. Um, and so like curating like audio from various like cultural areas to do that
Yeah.
for people, which is also why I enjoy DJing so much, is very fulfilling because it's like a level of care to the people that I'm giving my sounds to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess the short answer is yes, I do feel an internal pull, but the prevailing wind always brings me back to myself. And I don't ultimately worry about being a people pleaser in my music.
Mm. Mm. You mentioned being a DJ. Wait, give me one quick sec. It was getting so dark in here
Yeah.
as the sun was setting. You mentioned being a DJ, and I don't like that light. Hold on.
Okay, yes, take the time you need.
You're mentioning being a DJ. I'm curious about like the 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 struggle or let me back up. So
Hmm.
I've been in rooms where you've DJ'd and folks are just in the zone, just doing their thing. And sort of going back to that previous question, like does that also affect how you present the music to the audience? Or again, is it just what you're feeling? And then what is it about being a DJ that's so magical? Because I do feel like when I hear you or when you're performing, like there is sort of like this magical crystal or mist that you sort of create space wise for folks to be able to just really enjoy themselves and really be in the moment and so I guess I'm not necessarily saying like tell us your secret on how you do that, but holding space, like it's a very nuanced skill, and I'm curious, do you notice that you do that? Are you aware that you have that magical skill? Is it something that you sort of developed over years? I'm just curious about like that holding space for other folks when you're DJing and or maybe just when you're singing on stage because I've also heard you sing on stage too. Um, and I know I'm shooting a lot of questions at you, and let me know if it's too much. But I'm just curious about like that sort of holding space. Are you aware that you do that, or is it sort of like part of you, or is it like intentional? Obviously intentional, but like how intentional is that creating space for folks is for you? Does does that question?
Yes, yes, this is a lovely nest of questions. Thank you. Yeah, so go back to the beginning, and touch upon the DJ endeavors. Yeah, it is ultimately a feedback loop with DJing. Like I usually like I would say 90% of the time I curate my sets like beforehand, before an event. Like days, months, well, usually not that far in advance. That's the dream, but like weeks
Okay, yeah, yeah.
and actually months because I'm always like scourging, like looking for new music and I'm like, saving it and coming back to it. So yes. Um, but I'll come with something on my heart that I want to express or like,
Yeah.
some ideas that I want to share. And I'll drop it, I'll introduce it, I'll slowly build to it and see how people react to it or and judging on how people react in specific instances, I may take some tangents, I may take some opportunities for tangents. Because I do feel good and I do feel validated when people positively and demonstratively react to the music that I'm playing. Um, and so, I'll explore the ideas that I think that they're picking up on, for a while. Um, and just to, just in like one in service to them and two also to flex the muscle like for myself to see like whether I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll do it for a while before I pick up with like the main story arc or if I'll have like an idea to traverse, some other atmosphere. Um, and I think, yes, that I am aware, I'm very much aware of my power to make space and to construct a container, especially like when I'm performing. And I love to do it like when I'm performing live because um like you said, it does give like people a direct um like invitation to enjoy themselves, to let go, and to embody themselves. And it's a very vulnerable position that I put myself in as well, because it's like I
Mm-hmm.
this is like my authentic self. Like this is not. some huge projection of what I want you to see of me. Like this is literally like what I've been working on, what, brings me joy and like what I've carefully considered over so many man hours, to present.
Yeah.
And, I want you to, whether you directly identify with it, chances are, you may in a way. I hope you do. And if you don't, then that's fine because, we don't have the same experience. Um, and we're not monolithic as humans by any means. But I do want like my music and the expression of the music to be like an example of of something that people can do, like regardless of how good they're at doing it. Like you can express yourself and you can allow time and space to express yourself with whom you want to express yourself. And it can be an amazing experience for you. It can be therapeutic for you.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
so I want that to be like the main takeaway, like from my performances. And I have a lot of people that come up to me like after performances, um, or it'll be outside the context of performance, and they may have seen me live at some place or have listened to my music at some length, and that not queer, like so heterosexual, like white people, with like very like different upbringing, background, and like cultural values, right?
yeah.
Um, but they're vibing to it, like they're listening to it. They remember the lyrics, like they're reciting back to me, and they're like telling me about like how like kick ass will be a word that they use, that I am just like doing something that's like unique and authentic to me, and that they one haven't seen before, and two feels like freedom. It doesn't. There's no like fear in it.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
yeah. So I
Have you ever done
and
anything? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. But well, so I think like the expression of oneself like without fear. That's also I think it was either Erica Badu or Nina Simone who said this, um, which she was regarding to, I think it was Nina Simone. She was regarding to like what artistry is, or like expressing yourself like in the music, like true artistry, expressing oneself without fear.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
I feel
A lot of calming exercises, and I'm curious, do you have anything that you do to help prepare you to sort of be in front of all those people if you have any anxiety at all about being on stage?
yes, I think um practice, rehearsal. I think my main source of anxiety, like in front of people, like in terms of performance, is like I think if I mess something up, it's because I'm not comfortable enough doing the thing, and I haven't done it enough times. So I always like to make sure that I'm super like familiar with the material, that I'm remembering all my lyrics. Sometimes, if I have a live performance, and in the days leading up to, I'll just be listening to my music, like mouthing off to it all day, like just on repeat until the lyrics are like third nature in my brain again. And it's kind of easy to re-inscribe the memory of the lyrics because I write everything. Um, so I know, the motive behind each line. But I, in turn, going back to like the assuaging the anxiety, I there's always like a nominal amount of anxiety that I have like before performances, because I never take for granted, or I'm never like delusional enough to think that I'm just gonna knock it out of the park every time.
And you do, by the way. I've seen you perform, and so you do. So,
Thank you. Thank you. And so I think like the the regularity at which I perform is like also super important to me. Like I want to perform like routinely, like at least, between like 2 to 4 times a month, like that, would be like my desired cadence. Um, in which I would feel comfortable, like just being on stage, like it's just like another day. Um, and I think like yeah, just as long as I'm like super comfortable with the material, then I can like focus the rest of like my energy on connecting with the audience. And because I think yeah, the very root of my anxiety is like being fearful that like I won't connect with the audience as much as I could. And then like as much as I should, and then like defining like what level does what what is that? What is that? What level of connection should I connect with the audience? Like how do I define that?
Mm.
Um and so
Mhm.
yeah, I think yeah, just like being able to answer those questions and like realizing and or like remembering that the answers constantly change um is super important in terms of like psychologically preparing and then like dealing with the anxiety.
Yeah.
And then like there's also like the visual presentation of myself. Like I always have to have like a well curated visual appearance. Um because I that is like um it's like my armor, like so to
Yeah.
speak. Is
Yeah.
like even though I it's like an invitation for people to approach me because they're thinking about the ideas that I'm expressing or with the garments or like with the colors or um that it makes me more visible and it heightens the likelihood for people to want to connect with me.
Mm.
And so like in a way like it invites me to be more social and
Mm.
it like provides a way in for me to connect with people because they may compliment me. And then it might present like a thread of conversation upon which we can continue
Mm.
that could lead like a wonderful connection based on something that we have in common, like based on that initial compliment.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I think that that's like a therapeutic element. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm curious about like, so we talked about, where you shared sort of like their sort of like the process of creating. You shared sort of like the holding of space and sort of the preparation
Mhm.
to sort of enter that space. What does self-care look like for you, either outside of all of that, intentional, and because all of that takes energy, right? Like to find the music, to create the space, to listen to the music while you're sort of doing the editing process, to rewrite the words, or when you're DJing, like that all takes energy. And I'm curious about like what does self-care look like for you?
Mm. I would say a little bit like in terms of the music, I think like sometimes like in terms of like songwriting is self-care because I'm
Mm,
often like metabolizing issues that I haven't fully worked out. So it feels really good to like get those down on paper and to like see my actual handwriting on the page, and to see like almost like intangible details like the bearing down of the ink and like how like thick it is on the paper, like the style of my handwriting, whether I've written in cursive or in all caps or in title case or in regular sentence case. It gives me a lot of information about like what I've gone through, like at that time that I was like writing the things down. And so like especially like if I'm recording and like and I finished the recording or if I finished the song and I'm looking at the lyrics or like I'm in the studio and I have some like notes like right in front of me. That's why I keep like looking around. Like just like stuff like on
yeah,
paper.
yeah.
And I'm recording it and I'm reading off of it or referring to it. And it's kind of like like I'm taking a time machine and I'm healing myself. And because like I'm finishing like the project, um, it's been like this whole time has been like somewhat of like a self-care exercise of like me taking time to sit with the idea, develop the idea, be okay with the feelings, work through the feelings. And it's
Mm,
usually a case of like me um like if there's any embarrassment or anxiety around the feelings, it's usually on part of like me not wanting to feel the way that I feel.
mm,
And so like a large part of like the process is like either projecting what I want to feel or like working through the icky feelings. So and reminding myself that like it's okay to feel the way that I feel, but and like as long as we are like like working like constructively to metabolize the emotion, then we're doing something good with it. It's all part of the human experience.
right, yeah,
Um, but yeah, aside from the music, I think like yeah, just like taking care of like my literal self, like taking care of the vessel, is super important and like preparing myself to show up. So it's like what that looks like is like resting, it's eating well, it's cooking, it's taking time to do nothing. It's stretching, it's physical exercise, making sure that I'm in the sunlight, like
yeah,
riding my bikes that I love and, like pursuing my hobbies. Um, it's communing and bonding with people and learning new things and like going on side quests, so to speak. Um, those all those kind of like replenish me and like give me the energy to like want to radiate it outward like in a performance or like in at a at a club in a DJ set or at a private party.
right.
Yeah.
Two more questions and then we're gonna start winding down. So the first question is like I'm curious, have you ever done like written a lyrics or performed a show or did a did some singing? That sound did some singing. Um, you did a performance like a while ago and then you looked back on it and you're like, I think I could tweak this a little bit. Like, have you ever gone back on any of your work, like a year from when you did it, or maybe like 6 months from when you did it, and you just revise it, or do you sort of just like do it and then you're like, I'm done, I'm good, I'm trusting the process, I'm gonna let it be its thing. I'm just curious about like, have you ever gone back to on a particular um music that you created or singing process that you created and just revised it or sort of we tweaked it or reworked it.
Yes, I love going back and doing that. I try to strike the balance between like going back and moving forward, and I don't want to go back too much because I always want to create new things. But I constantly am permutating the old ideas into new ones, or the same ideas but like with different spins on them. So. Um, I remix myself. That's one way I do it. Make remixes of some of my songs. Another way in which I do it is with the arrangement of the music for live performances. Like there was I performed at Club Cafe in Boston in this past March. And it was like my first solo show, and it was like an hour of music, and it was all stuff that I had, finished and released previously, except for one song at the time that I hadn't released yet, which was Miss Kit Kat. But the solo show was like I wanted to embrace and celebrate like my oeuvre, or like my body of work, like so to speak. So that's kind of like also like insight to why I named it oeuvre course. But it was also like meant to be like some geeky, like multilingual approximate pun. So it's like oeuvre course, like like a course of like the pieces of the oeuvre, like over time to celebrate like each of my works that span, period. And then it's also like kind of meant to say like, of course. So it's just like, of course we're doing this. Of course we're here. Um, but yeah, I love like making new arrangements of old songs. I made a mashup of one of my songs for that show actually, and it was one of my songs called Over, where I basically made a coda at the end of it, where and just like changed the key, changed the tempo like entirely, like made it drum and bass, and then kind of like mashed it up with like the chorus of like Genuine's what was it? I think it's called Pony or something,
Mm.
my saddle's waiting, ride it,
Yeah.
jump on it, that song.
Yeah, yeah,
Um
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so like I had like two like I repeated the chorus like two times like at the end of the track. And it was just like a complete departure from like everything that like you heard before with like the and then I kind of like afterwards I kind of we wove back like some of like my ad lib lyrics like after like the chorus. So I love to do like stuff like that where it's like it gives like it's also just like gives people like more opportunities to like experience the work. Um, and it really does like underscore like these songs as like living documents, as like living
Mm. Yeah,
stories,
yeah,
as
yeah.
and that they should be permeable like somewhat to like proportionally to the environments in which they are like evoked and like
Mm.
performed.
Mm.
So that kind of like bespoke like deliverance is something that I want to be like a signature like of my artistry and live performance. And so yeah, I enjoy that a lot. That's what also just like reinvigorates me like with respect to the past music because it's like I may not be in the same place that I was like when I made that song or those songs
Right.
or music, and it's like sometimes I had to like kind of like get myself like back into it or just like re-inspire myself because it's just like oh shit, like I ran, like I'm talking about like breaking up with a guy and like in some sort of tone of contempt and like you're not the person I should have fell for and like all this stuff and it's just like okay well that was the point, we were there. We're no longer there, but like how do we like go back to that person and
Yeah.
like love to that person and like also like just share that person like with the world because like I was that person, it's not like I was never that person, so that was a part of my artistic experience, so like why not include it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, as I write more music I get to decide which is suited, like which songs are like suited for like this occasion, like I may want to have like an overarching emotion of um like escapism. I may want it to be about like loss
Mm.
or
Mm.
like a
Mm.
personal tragedy or so in those cases it's about like which songs like speak to that experience
Mm.
and which or yeah, so whether it's like a singular experience or like a composite experience, yeah, that influences me.
I like that image of being able to sort of go back and sort of see where you once were in a particular time when you created that music and being able to sort of see it from a different perspective. And that definitely sounds invigorating and it sounds very sort of empowering to be like, oh, I knew where I was then and this is where I am now. And like that and that's that's it's a beautiful contrast, I would say, for that aspect of creating because I think some people would be like they would get stuck, right? Like they would get stuck in sort of like really trying to rework that over and over and over again. And I think you mentioned like that's not your premise, right? It's just being able to be like, okay, like this compilation feels right for me to sort of step back into that space. So the last question is, I asked sort of all my guests, and I just want to thank you so much for taking the time and showing up. And I'm going to put all your information, and so folks could sort of like figure out how to get in contact with you, how to sort of find your music, and because again, like I've seen you perform, I've heard you DJ, and like you speak to me.
Mm.
And so, without giving away a lot of secrets, and I think I've asked you this question before in the past, is if you were to sort of give advice or to sort of mentor somebody, like what sort of um, steps you would sort of have them take in getting into specifically the DJ world or being a singer, right? Like I guess more so DJing, because again, answer whichever way feels comfortable to you. But I'm just curious about like that if someone didn't know where to start or didn't know how to begin and they had like this inkling like I want to DJ or I want to sing, like what mentorship advice would you give?
I would say number one, develop your taste.
Mm,
Like I growing up like as a singer, I was like extremely petrified to sing in public unless I was like under the veil of singing in a group. Um and so I didn't sing like at home, like around, like out loud in the house, like unless nobody was home. And because it's very like emotional and vulnerable for me. And I'm trying, like I've always been trying to find ways to like decouple like the act of singing from like the it doesn't always have to be raw like emotional expression. Like come
yeah.
on, like get it together. But like I don't know. Um and but I would say like develop your tastes because there were many times and in many groups that I felt like out of place as a musician. Like I was like, in jazz bands and people are, we're playing jazz standards and we're touring. We're in Dublin, Ireland, and we're, playing these charts that, are considered canon in the jazz world. And while like I respect this canon, it doesn't really speak to me like as what I'm doing now speaks to me. Um, and I think like you have to find that thing that like really just like gets you tingling and then like hold
Mm,
on to that. See, if there's any more of that you can find, and then like somehow like develop that into like a composite product. Like, and the composite product is like you. Like you are that.
exactly. Yeah.
Like you're the amalgamation of all those like experiences that really speak to you that you find amazing that you might want to express. So save those things. And especially with DJing, like start collecting music, start collecting sound bites. Don't fret too much about the equipment or like the technical mastery. Like that is, yes, that's a huge part of it. But like just having things to share and like having a well-etched purpose for which to share the things is like a huge motivator. I think that should be like the number one kind of like impetus to like even want to become a DJ. um Nowadays we see a lot of DJs like up and coming. It seems like not to put a pejorative tint on it, or like euphemistic, but like it's, the process is like democratized, where it's like it's more accessible to a
Yeah.
wider, a variety of people now, which is on the one hand like really great, and it yields for so many different like multitudes of expression that like we otherwise wouldn't get, which is amazing. Um, and on the other hand, it also yields me and some other like many other artists in my community to ask the question of like why are people turning to DJing so
Mm,
much is
mm, yeah.
economy is not great. It's because it seems like a discipline that has like a low barrier to entry.
Mm,
Um,
mm, mm,
it's as long as you have some like tap on the the pulse of culture, like if you have a dissemination of culture and the recycling of the means, in the sharing of the videos, you too are technically you are a culture creator because you are pushing it along, you are disseminating it. If you are remixing reels on TikTok, like you have something to say and you're saying
Yeah,
it, like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like that's not illegitimate.
yeah.
But like in terms of like the technical, like where the taste meets the technical mastery, um, there's too much concern, I think, with like taste in terms of like how, you know, much popular appeal does it have.
Mhm.
And that takes away the focus like from the technical mastery. And I like with DJing, there's always been like I always want to express like a level of virtuosity in the work.
Yeah,
Like there's like there should be something about like my DJ style that's like that says, oh, like this is really amazing. And like not just anybody can get up here and do this.
yeah,
You know, like
yeah,
it speaks to like the dedication, the practice, like the work put in.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's definitely I think that that I'm a big believer in passion. Like there has to be this passion for it and this like drive and not just because it's sort of like the kitschy thing to do, right? Like sort of like
Mhm,
the
mhm,
the cool thing to do and I think like you sort of alluded to is like like not doing it because it's sort of like that sort of low bar um aspect to it. um
mhm,
so,
mhm.
Kazi, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to share your process, to share your insight, and to sort of share part of your journey in being an artist and sort of really living your passion, because not a lot of people get to do that. And so, thank you so much for gracing me with your time and for everybody else, like I'm gonna put Akazi's information down below, and you'll sort of see where they're performing and some and I believe you've sent me some links of some upcoming stuff that's coming, right? So thank you so much, Akazi.
Thank you, Eshin. Yes,
Oh,
a joy. Thank you for having me.
okay. Aw.